And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on this matinee Monday, April the 13th, 2019. Or 2020 rather. Hope everybody's doing okay, staying safe out there and staying indoors. I know here in the Michigan area, it is windy as all get out. My friends that are watching up in the UP, I hope you haven't put away those snow blowers, those shovels. My goodness, some of the pictures I've seen from up there getting anywhere from 12 to 24 inches of snow since yesterday makes this windstorm we're getting down here not too bad. I think we can handle it. Hey, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hope you enjoy your lunch hour with us, your late lunch hour, or for those of you out on the West Coast, your late morning on this day after Easter. Hope everybody had a great Easter and a great Passover as well. We're going to be on till 2 o'clock this afternoon talking sports with you. And very excited. Coming up at 1:15, we're going to be joined by Steve Finnemore. He's been involved with basketball for many years, an ex-coach. He's a basketball historian, I guess I'd like to put it. He shares a lot of great stuff on Facebook, history buff, a student of the game. And it's going to be fun to maybe walk down memory lane, talking a little NBA and college basketball from the 1970s, late 60s, maybe early 80s. Just some of the heroes of my time back in the 70s, growing up watching NBA and college basketball right up there with all the other sports. But it'll be fun to chat with Steve at approximately 1:15 Eastern time here this afternoon. The show will be on here this afternoon till about 2 o'clock. So looking forward to talking to Steve here in about 10 minutes or so. Again, hope you had a great weekend. Not a whole lot going on in the world of professional sports, as you can expect with the coronavirus. I know the big news as far as baseball goes, now the latest as far as what they're trying to do, come up with a plan to start when they start the season back up, if they can get the baseball season underway, is maybe do a unique 1-year only realignment of the teams, with maybe playing both in Florida now and Arizona for the upcoming year, utilizing all the minor league facilities or whatever for that in front of no fans. It'll be an interesting concept on that with the Cactus League and the Grapefruit League. Excuse me. 16 teams in each, or 15 teams, whatever it is, in each league. But it'll be an interesting setup. I know with Detroit, they'd be in with the Yankees again, which brings back memories of yesteryear. But they'd also have the Phillies in with them, which would be awful interesting. So, excuse me, would be some great fun on that. We can talk a little more about that. We're guessing, as always, about what if the seasons are going to start back up. I know if you're looking for a silver lining or a glimmer of hope as far as the sports season starting back up, the Chinese baseball season has started this past weekend. So who knows? Maybe in 4 to 6 weeks we can get everything going. I certainly hope so. I know we talk about this at, it seems like every show, if there's a possibility of basketball and hockey finishing their year, baseball starting up, football, are they going to be delayed? I don't know. We're all in a wait and see, a holding pattern, and there's nothing wrong with being optimistic about what's going to happen as far as the season starting. I think that a lot's going to depend on, the flattening out of the curve. That's the bottom line. And is there going to be a vaccine? Is there a way that we can be preventative with this? So it's going to be tough. I can almost guarantee, I can't guarantee, but I can make a bold prediction that we are going to see games probably with no fans in the stands, at least the beginning for baseball. And if they do start basketball and hockey back up, I could see pro basketball, their tournament or whatever they're going to do, if it's neutral site, is going to be without fans in the stands. And that's going to be, We talked about it. It's going to be very, very strange. And we talked about it last week with the pro wrestling doing their gig, their Super Bowl with their WrestleMania and whatnot in front of nobody, and how difficult it was for them to perform, do their promos, whatnot. It's got to be difficult. It's going to have to be difficult with basketball. I mean, these players feed off of that emotion of the stands, the crowd getting behind them. I know once you start playing, you focus more maybe on the actual game, but I know it's going to be different. It's definitely going to be an adjustment period, and I like that the players are coming out and at least admitting that they'll tell you that it really is going to be something different. So really, we're at a wait and see approach on it. We really are, and day by day, it changes all the time. New ideas coming out as far as what to do with baseball, and again, basketball and hockey. The neutral sites. I think it's a great idea if they can get it in. Basketball and hockey, it'll work out a little better because they're 80% of their season's pretty much over. And as far as being away from their families, it wouldn't be as difficult as baseball, which to me, that's going to be the biggest stumbling block, in my opinion, with these neutral site setups that they have going with the Grapefruit League setup and the Cactus League as far as where they play their minor league games. I think it's a novel idea. I think it's great. But the toughest part, not only getting everybody screened and make sure they're not carrying the virus or whatnot, it's safe and sanitized and all that. You're going to ask these players to be away from their families for up to 3, 4, 5 months, 4 months probably. And that's going to be tough. Players with young families, newborns, whatever. It's they go on the road for a couple of weeks at a time at the most, but they go home with their families after that. This is a lot to ask, and I don't know if the Players Association will sign off on it. I think the main driving force that will get it is money. Let's be honest. They're going to stop being paid, if I'm not mistaken, after May 31st, and I think that's when it's going to start hitting the pocketbooks, and you might see some of the younger guys going, "Hey, man, I'd rather step forward and do it." So there's a lot to talk about on that. It changes all the time. We're going to talk more as we get closer about the draft in the NFL. That's still going on. It's going to be April 23rd, I believe, which is coming up. That's when it starts, so that's in 10 days. And we'll give a mock draft. We'll go through all of that, the scenarios with the teams. My Lions, what are they going to do? They're going to trade out of that third pick? Are they going to be outrageous and pick Tua? Lots of indecision on that. This is a make or break year for the Lions, so we'll talk more about that as we get closer to the draft. So I hope you enjoy those shows coming up here in the future. We're going to talk nostalgia this week, as I mentioned. We've got Steve Finnemore coming up here in about 5 minutes as we're going to take a step back to the 60s, 70s, maybe early 80s, talk pro and college basketball. I like to talk about those times. It was right when I started really getting into it, was the early to mid 70s, but I love reading about the 60s and 70s. The NBA was such a different time back then, really dominated by the big guy, with the likes of Bob Lanier. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's got to be at the top of the list as the number one player in the 70s. If not, he's darn close. But other big guys like Bob McAdoo and Elvin Hayes, and in college with, the redhead, Bill Walton, who had such a promising NBA career till, he blew out his knee and, it got curtailed. But those are just some of the big names. Artis Gilmore, the A-Train. I used to love watching him with the Bulls. He was tough. And some of the, UCLA with the run that they had in basketball, with just the talent that they had. And, some of the guys that were so good in college that weren't as big of a standout in the NBA. The first one that comes to mind, I know he had a good beginning of his career, Pistol Pete Maravich. The guy averaged over 40 points a game in college. And the crazy thing about that, and we'll talked to Steve about that. He got cut from the Olympic team in 1968. How crazy is that? Well, we're going to step aside right now, take a quick break, and when we come back, hopefully we'll have Steve on the line as you are watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live on this Matinee Monday here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network.
Esports are here to stay. Go to jazzsports.ag, log into your account, and look for our new esports section on the top of your screen. Browse through all the different available matches and watch them live with our exclusive esports betting platform. Get instant access to game results, pending and graded bet reports, outright bet types, and upcoming match schedules, all at the easy reach of your fingertips. Jazz Sports puts you in the game.
Drinkade, ready for distribution worldwide.
Nothing makes us happier at Lexington Law than when our clients cancel our services. Listen to this client call and see what we mean.
Lexington Law Firm, this is Erin.
I would like to cancel my account.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, don't be. Actually, you guys have done tremendous work for me, and I was working with you for several years now, and my goal was to get a mortgage written by the end of this year, and I just got that mortgage commitment.
That is wonderful.
My credit went from like 440 working with you guys to 700.
Nice.
And I got a very good 4.25% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I have nothing at all bad to say. If you ever want me to write a testimonial, well, I will. As a matter of fact, I've recommended you to a lot of friends.
Lexington Law has served over 500,000 clients, taking expert action on their credit that has led to the removal of millions of questionable negative items from their credit reports. Call now and learn more about how Lexington Law may be able to help you in the removal of negative items from your credit report, such as collections, late payments, charge-offs, and many others. Call Lexington Law today.
And good afternoon. Welcome back again to the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Yours truly, Captain Lou, in the chair with you again this afternoon till about 2 o'clock Eastern Time. Glad you could be a part of our day here this afternoon. Glad we could be a part of yours too as well. If you're on the Eastern Time Zone, maybe finishing up your lunch, or in the Central Time Zone, just kicking in, I'm glad you could step back and to be a part of the show here this afternoon on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Hey, we talked about the draft on the NFL level. Now I read something where the NBA is looking maybe to push it back, their draft, to at least August 1st with what's going on here with the coronavirus. And, probably not a bad idea, especially if they have to delay the season, because I know that they still want to get this season in. And it'll give them a chance to have somewhat of a semblance of order should the basketball season still be in play. We can hope that they can be in play, and it also will it'll give the prospects a chance to show their wares too. That's the thing with the NBA or the NFL draft right now that you notice, where they can't have their pro days. It's all virtual now, and it's obviously going to be a hindrance. To what extent, I'm not sure, because I think about that. There's two ways to look at it. Yeah, it could be a hindrance, but the teams that have done their homework, they've watched these guys. I don't know if it's really going to be that much of a difference. Anyways, let's get to our guest line right now. And on the other end of our line, we're pleased to be joined by what I call a basketball historian. He's just a student of the game, Steve Finnemore. Steve, thanks for taking time out of your day. How are you?
Captain Lou, I'm doing great, man. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be on your show. I really, really appreciate you asking me to be on.
Oh, hey, the pleasure's mine too. This is what we like to do. We like to talk sports, and what I've been doing, Steve, the last week or so, since I've had some extra time to do some extra shows, is go back down memory lane. Favorite venues for people to go to, their top 5, this and that. I'm going to pose my question to you. What was the first pro sporting event, basketball or otherwise, that you were able to go to?
Well, it's pretty easy because I remember like it was yesterday. It was back 76, 77, Madison Square Garden. I was 12 years old, and the New York Knicks were playing the Philadelphia 76ers. And it was actually Julius Erving, the great Dr. J's first game back in New York, because Dr. J, about 3 months before that, was sold by the New York Nets to the Sixers. And I was able to see that game, and Lou, I'll never forget it.
Wow, that's awesome. I see. That's one of the things. Now, you're from the New York area, correct?
Yes, I'm from Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, that's one of the – I hate to use the word jealous, but I'm jealous for guys like you that were able to grow up where you were within a stone's throw of being able to go to a pro game, because I grew up on the shores of Lake Superior. My claim to fame is growing up being able to watch Tom Izzo play high school ball and college ball up in the UP. So,
yeah.
But it was funny. I tell everybody, my first – pro game was the Tigers and the Brewers in Milwaukee because it was closer. But that was also the first place I ever watched an NFL game, was also in the same venue because the Packers used to play at County Stadium. So it's kind of ironic. But getting back to the NBA, you know, I'd love to look back at those times because I'm about your age, about the same age. I was 12 years old in 77, and they were all larger than life to me back then. Bob Lanier, Kareem, you know, the big guys. But just being able to watch those and just looking back, what was your favorite rivalry of the NBA back in the 70s?
Well, being a Knicks fan, the great games were always against the Boston Celtics. And I remember now, see, there may be listeners who are a little younger than we are, and they're so used to, like, every single night watching a basketball game, because now with League Pass, the NBA League Pass, with TNT, with ESPN, with the NBA TV, you can watch your favorite team every single night. You can watch every team in the league. Back then, it was special because you only really saw – you know, maybe every other night, every couple of nights you'd see a game. So when we would see the Knicks play the Celtics, you know, it was a big treat. You know, the Knicks and the Bullets, who are now the Wizards, that was a big rivalry. And of course, you know, back then when the Knicks played the Lakers, you know, that was a big rivalry. I can remember Magic Johnson coming into New York as a rookie in 1980. And I got to tell you, Lou, I never missed a game because I was a big fan. And in high school, you can use your student ID card at Madison Square Garden, and you can get an $8 ticket for half price. So that would be $4. And we would buy the ticket, we'd sit up top, and we would sneak down. Now, during the late 80s or late 70s into the 80s, the Knicks weren't that good. They barely made the playoffs some years. So it was easy to get a seat. And so going to those games, it just built my, you know, love for the Knicks and for the NBA. See, in New York City, it wasn't really a college town basketball-wise. You had a Big East tournament, was great, but I wasn't really a big college fan. And I think that's why, Lou, when you see my post on social media, I mention a lot about college basketball in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, because I wasn't really into it back then. So all my work that I post now that you see is all done through research.
Yeah. You know, it's funny is I look back on those games. Now, I don't know if it was like this for you, Steve, back in the 70s. A lot of times we had to watch the games tape delayed on Friday nights. And you remember they'd give you that 5-second warning to turn your volume down in case you didn't want to. I used to live for Friday nights to be able to watch the Lakers and whoever they were playing. You know, every once in a while, the Pistons were like the Knicks, Steve. We were about in the same boat back then. They were good in the middle 70s. Then we really tanked for a while. And then, of course, Detroit and those battles in the early 80s, those playoff rounds with Bernard King and the Knicks. I loved watching Bernard King. Boy, could he shoot.
Well, you know, it's funny when you mentioned tape delay. You mention that to a kid today or someone in their early 20s, mid 20s, they have no idea what you're talking about. So it's funny you say that, because when Magic was a rookie with the Lakers and they won the NBA championship over the 76ers, game 6, where he had that magnificent game where he played center because Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was hurt that night. Mm-hmm. That game came on at 11:30 on CBS, and it was played in Philadelphia. And so the tape delay game came on at 11:30. We didn't know the score. We didn't want to know the score. I was 14, and we watched it. And I remember there was no cell phones. There was no texting. We all met. It must have been 1:45, 2 a.m. when the game was over. And we all went to the schoolyard across the street where we played. And we started playing ball. Now, it was May, I believe it was late May, maybe early June. Mm-hmm. I'm losing my thought on the date exactly, but we played. It was warm out. There must have been 15 of us out on the court. And then about halfway into, probably about 30 minutes into our playing pickup ball, it was a Catholic schoolyard, and there was a church, and there was a rectory right next to it. A priest came out and screamed at us. It must have been 2:30 in the morning. He screamed at us. We grabbed the ball. Lou, we all sprinted out of there and went back home. You don't forget times like that, and it was just wonderful to be a teenager in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, it definitely was. We're being joined by Steve Finnemore here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. I can remember my first recollection of watching NBA playoffs was, of course, the Pistons when they lost that 7-game series to the Bulls back with Artis Gilmore and my God, Norm Van Leer, all those. Oh, they were good, man. And then the battles with the Bucks before the Bucks traded Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that when they got 4 guys back for him. You know, those 2 out of 3 series games, and
they were great. They
were. My goodness. And then I can remember being so excited that Detroit beat Milwaukee, and then ran into the buzzsaw that was Golden State. And, boy, those Golden State teams were so good with Clifford Ray and, Rick Barry. Oh, my God. But what really fascinates me now that I look back on it, Steve, is how much it really was dominated by the center play. And that just, not only Jabbar, but you had Elvin Hayes and Jack Sikma and people like that. Like I said, Artis Gilmore. So much fun to watch.
I really miss center play, low post play. It was a lot of fun because when I played, when I was younger, I always made sure that our big guy on our team, say pickup ball, I always made sure I went to other parks to play, other parts of the city. Whenever I had a big guy on my team, I was kind of like a combo guard. I can shoot from the outside, but I also like to share the ball. I always loved to share the ball and hit the big man in the post because I always thought it was it was so much fun. It was strategy involved. It opens up the floor. Today now in the game, and I'm not that old guy who says get off of my lawn and says back in my time. I really try to stop myself from saying that. But the big difference, obviously, in today's game, everyone's shooting threes now. Even the big guys are out there shooting. You mentioned the old guys from back in the day. Bob McAdoo from the Buffalo Braves. He was an incredible outside shooter. And guys like that, I miss, But, hey, you know what? Things change. It's inevitable that things are going to change in the game. And I don't mind today's game. I really don't. I like the three-point shot. But when you mentioned the big guys, Bill Cartwright, back in the day, it was just a lot of fun.
Oh, it sure was. And you could really see the matchups. What I always remember was Jack Sikma against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the 70s. Yep. You mentioned Elvin Hayes and Bob McAdoo. Boy, he was good till he got injured. And who knows if Bill Walton wouldn't have got hurt back in the 70s. Was he good with UCLA. Came right into the NBA and won MVP. They won the championship for Bill Ramsey. And boom, he got hurt. Wow, that was a talent that really could have been dominant.
Walton to me, and obviously it's subjective, it's an opinion, but he could have gone down as the greatest center of all time if he did not get hurt, because he did it all. Now, when they won the championship in 77, the Portland Trailblazers, that is, when they won the finals, they beat Philadelphia. Lou, the following season, Portland got out to a 50-10 start, the first 60 games in, and they were on their way to back-to-back championships.
Yes.
But lo and behold, Bill Walton breaks his foot, and he's out the rest of the year, and the Blazers just collapsed. But, hey, I'll tell you another center who we know. I've been in Michigan now for almost 25 years. This is 24th year here in Michigan. We all know about Bill Laimbeer, and of course, other teams, other fans, and other cities know about him. But they have a negative connotation when they talk about Bill Laimbeer. They see him as a mean guy, a dirty guy. I get all that. He displayed all that behavior. But Bill Laimbeer was a heck of a center for that Detroit Pistons team, because when he played for the Cavaliers before that, he wasn't very good. It wasn't until he got to Detroit and he played with, better players, obviously.
Right.
Laimbeer is a big part. Love him or hate him, basketball-wise, he was a big part of those Pistons 2 championships.
Oh, 100%. The mental part of his game, he could shoot, 90% from the free throw line.
He was great.
And
he was money from the line.
Oh yeah, and he could hit the three, but he wasn't afraid to do it inside. Those Detroit teams obviously were loaded, but so was everybody else in the 80s.
Right.
I loved watching Philadelphia, and then of course Boston and LA. Houston, there's an underrated team from the 80s. Houston snuck through and got into the finals. Oh my goodness! Like you said, Steve, it was so much fun. It's fun now. I get that, and I have to give you credit. You and I had a little bit of banter a couple of years ago on Twitter, because I asked you, "Isn't it just a 2-man game?" And you've kind of opened my eyes a little bit to watch it a little bit more, and it's fun too because my son, who's 20 now, he really likes the NBA game, and so I've gotten more into watching it. And I can see the interest. It is more than just a 3-point shooting game now. Still,
I tell you what. Speaking of the 3-point shooting game, can you imagine? First of all, imagine telling a kid in high school or telling one of these Michigan State Spartan guys that, hey, so and so averaged 44 points a game in college. They would look at you like you were crazy. Yeah. These guys that lead the country in scoring. 22, 25, maybe 28 points a game. Sometimes we've never even heard of these guys because they play at a small school. Yeah. But Pistol Pete Maravich, in 3 years at LSU, averaged 44 points a game. And Lou, here's the thing about Pistol in college, and I actually came across this just a couple of nights ago. Yeah, he was a ball hog. He took 38 shots a game, but he also averaged 5 assists over his 3-year career, and Lou, he grabbed 6 rebounds a game. So it's not like this guy was coming on the court just chucking up shots because his dad was the coach. He was passing the ball, and he was also rebounding the ball. So, Lou, say what you want about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being the greatest college player ever. I get all that talk. They were 88-2, whatever their record was. They won 3 titles. Pistol Pete Maravich is the greatest college scorer in the history of the game.
100%. 100%. And you brought up a great point on Facebook last week, too. He got cut from the team that was going to go to the 68, that went to the 68 Olympics. Can you imagine that?
Hank Iba was the coach. He didn't like Pistol Pete's style. But Rick Mount was cut from that team. Rick Mount was a high scorer. Calvin Murphy, Dan Issel.
Lord.
Things like that happen. Guys get cut from teams. Everybody talks about Isaiah being left off the dream team. Now, look, we look back X amount of years. Of course, Isaiah should have been on that team, but there was personality conflicts. We hear all the rumors, the stories about Isaiah, Jordan, and Magic. So, but hey, it is what it is. It's over with, but it's fun looking back on that,
sure
and it's good conversation.
You bring up Isaiah, and again, I bring up Bernard King. That matchup they had, and then that last game at Joe Louis Arena, they had to play that year because the roof was leaking. And that, oh my Lord, what a series that was! I look back on that, and I know my favorite team lost, but still watching that, the old clips of that with him and Bernard King were just they were priceless.
Those games, I don't think. And I don't want to slant that old man, get off my lawn again. But I really do not think we're ever going to see basketball like that again. Number one, look, the players today, they're competitive. I definitely give them that. But the toughness that these guys displayed back in the day, like they weren't hanging out with each other. They weren't on the same AAU team together. You see these guys now, they're trading jerseys after games. Have you seen that jersey exchange that they do now?
Yes.
Like Michael Jordan and Charles Oakley, they would never do that. Like Bill Laimbeer and Larry Bird. Laimbeer and Larry Bird would never trade jerseys after games. They wouldn't be spotted like at a nightclub like they are now together having a couple of beers. It's like there was a part of the game, a part of the makeup of the players back then. Yeah. I don't want to say toughness, but it was just something that, they weren't going to let you win. They weren't going to let you have a layup. Like Pat Riley used to stress, Pat Riley, the great coach of the Lakers and the Knicks, he used to stress no layups, So when you went down to the basket, you were going to get put on your ass and make you go to the free throw line for 2 shots. Today, if a guy drives to the basket and there's a hard hit on the shooter, they go to the monitor to see if it's a flagrant 1 foul now. So, hey, look, I get trying to save – trying to help the superstars and keep everybody safe. I get all that stuff. But, hey, guys like Bird, Magic, Jordan, Isaiah, they're all walking around today. They're fine. They're healthy. They didn't die from getting fouled too hard.
No. And it's funny because I always go back to, they always say that Dusty Rhodes from pro wrestling was the originator of the bionic elbow. I still say that was Bill Cartwright because you went into the lane, you paid for it, and to me, he was the originator. But nobody was worse for wear.
Hey, speaking of Dusty Rhodes, I miss wrestling from back in the day because I can't even watch it anymore. I stopped watching it about 10 years ago. But Dusty Rhodes brings back great memories. Good call on that one.
Oh, yeah. I could talk pro wrestling, too, for hours on end. I'm looking back, and I was thinking about back again in the 60s and 70s and the early 80s, and you look at some of the names and, some of the coaching names. I forgot that, like, Jerry Sloan coached for North Carolina State before he got the Utah fame, and some of these coaches like Lenny Wilkins, the guy won wherever he went. And you look back at Al Attles and just Jack Ramsey. I said Bill Ramsey. I meant to say Jack Ramsey.
Yep.
And and then some of the characters like Dick Motta. I used to love watching him on the sidelines.
Well, Lou, the funny thing is you mentioned Jerry Sloan. A lot of people forget, he coached the Chicago Bulls before he came to,
That's right.
Utah, and he got fired by Chicago. So, a guy like Chuck Daly was fired in Cleveland. Chuck Daly, a lot of people forget this. He was a longtime assistant with the Philadelphia 76ers. All those Sixers Celtics matchups, Billy Cunningham was the head coach, but Chuck Daly was always his loyal assistant. So, there's been great names out there in the coaching. You mentioned Lenny Wilkins. He was amazing. He was a great player. By the way, Lenny Wilkins played at Providence. He didn't play high school basketball his senior year. His mom, one day I read this great story. His mom told him when he was a senior in high school, he said, Lenny, you can't play on the team this year. You have to get a job and help us, and help support the family. Can you imagine a kid today playing at Okemos High School? He's the best point guard on the team, and his mom says, "Hey, you can't play your senior year and you on the basketball team. You have to get a job." That's never happened since probably the Lenny Wilkins days.
And I forgot that Casey Jones coached the Bullets before his Boston Celtic fame. Took them to the finals.
That's right. I used to love Casey Jones because I kind of like the Bullets. I had a decent outside shot, like I said, and there was a guy from the neighborhood one day. We were playing, and the older guys used to watch us play. We used to go up and down, and I made a couple of jump shots in a row, and this was like probably the late 70s. I was like 12, 13, and he called me Phil Chenier, and I looked at him. I go, who's Phil Chenier? He goes, he plays for the Bullets, blah, blah, blah. So, like I said earlier, we didn't get many games on TV those days, but when I saw the Knicks play the Bullets, I saw who he was talking about, and he was going against Walt Frazier. So I became a Phil Chenier fan a little bit because the guy called me Phil Chenier. So, back in the day, man, those guys, the nicknames, they tagged you with, like, in the 7th grade, Lou, it's so funny. When we got new uniforms, our coach asked us, hey, what number do you want? So we had a chance to pick our own number
nice.
because they were buying brand new uniforms. So I went with 45 for Chenier. And my whole team, all my teammates had a favorite NBA player, and they all took their number after their favorite player.
Isn't that great? Hey, I wanted to ask you, since you're from New York, the Brooklyn area, and you talk about this, I've always been fascinated about the lore of the street basketball in New York City especially.
Yep.
And I see the stories that you've shared on Facebook, and I've heard a couple you've shared on radio over the years. It's fascinating how great basketball was back, and I'm sure it still is, the street hoops. And it's crazy how great it's been on the streets, but yet, unfortunately, you being a Knicks fan, you haven't been able to taste the success at the NBA level. But the basketball, the legends of watching and playing street hoops in New York is so fun to hear.
It's funny because there's different types of street ball, believe it or not, and it kind of bothers me or pains me when they do these documentaries on these former players. And I always say this, I don't say it often, but there were parks or schoolyards that you would go to where the run, the games were awesome. They were played the right way. They were tough. If you lost, you had to sit on the side and wait a couple of more games. And in the summertime was the best, obviously, because players that went away to college to play ball would come back home for the summer and they'd play pickup ball with you. So the games were great. And the other side of the street ball, Lou, is you got guys who are out there trying to be fancy, trying to be showmen, guys like that. A lot of those guys were uncoachable. They actually didn't even play college ball, or if they did, they dropped out. They quit the team. They dropped out of high school. They quit their high school team. So you always had a different style of pickup ball in New York City. And I'm really surprised that a lot of these historians or these filmmakers that put together these documentaries, they never mention that side of it. Because I knew of schoolyards and parks where there was great basketball being played. It was like high school and college basketball. But then I knew these other parks where you really didn't want to go to because everybody was more concerned with going through their legs, going around behind their back, being a ball hog. And nowadays, I think the games that they do play outside are more like that style of play because you see these commercials with these guys spinning the ball, dribbling between their legs. That's a street ball that a lot of people are familiar with now in 2020. But I'll tell you, Lou, back in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, there was some great basketball being played on the outdoors.
Real quick, couple more things, and I'll let you go, Steve.
Yep.
I look back on the college side of it. Obviously, UCLA dominated in the late 60s and 70s. You look at some of these teams that they had, Kermit Washington, Marcus Johnson towards the end, but of course, Bill Walton and Jabbar. If you could think of a team that you thought maybe was one of the best teams of the 70s, would you give it to Indiana because they were undefeated? Or maybe if looking back and reading on some of these earlier UCLA teams, what would you think?
It's funny because the Indiana team, someone told me a week ago, the team that went undefeated and won the national championship, they only lost one game the year before. They were 31-1, I believe. Mm-hmm. So over 2 years, they're 63-1. I think those Indiana teams, they get mentioned sometimes, but it's always those UCLA teams that get mentioned. And rightfully so. Those UCLA teams are ridiculous. I mean, John Wooden's a legend, obviously. The recruiting, there's a lot of, how can I say this? And I don't want to sound too negative, but there's a man by the name of Sam Gilbert. That name comes up a lot when you read about UCLA basketball. And a lot of people say, he did a few things behind the scenes with the players in terms of giving them cash, clothes, whatnot. So you can talk about that forever. There's been articles. Dan Wetzel of Yahoo has written about Sam Gilbert and the connection to UCLA. I've read about 6 books on UCLA and John Wooden over the past couple of years, so I've really, got a lot of knowledge from those books. But those Indiana teams were great. That NC State team with David Thompson. You know what's funny, Lou? And I just learned this, by doing my research. The year before they won the championship, okay, they went 27-0 in the regular season. They were ineligible to play in the NCAA tournament, so they were out. But they did finish 27-0 before they won the championship. So everybody thinks, Indiana's the only team, blah, blah, blah. But NC State was a heck of a team too. Yeah. But, yeah, I miss the 70s. I miss the 80s college basketball. Like, they're showing the games now on replay. I love the Georgetown-Villanova game in 85. The thing about comparing and trying to pick the best teams and best players ever, it's so subjective. It's your opinion. It's your opinion, and you're going to get different thoughts on it.
That's what makes sports fun, though, in my opinion.
That's right.
I'll let you out on this one. Do you foresee the NBA season picking back up this year, Steve, or do you think we may end up having to wait and just start everything from scratch in the fall?
I don't see it at all. Listen, I'm not Dr. Fauci.
No.
I don't even claim to know what I'm talking about when it comes to this. I just read things. All I do is listen to my wife. Whatever my wife tells me, I do. And for a lot of men out there listening, one of the best keys to a successful marriage is listen to your wife. So
100%.
Lou, I don't see them playing again. I don't even know why. I mean, I get the financial part of it. I don't even know why they would even try to do anything. It'd be ridiculous. But I give the NBA a lot of credit because they started the whole thing by canceling, suspending their games, and then everybody followed suit with it. I don't see it happening. I think like school, Lou, I think we should just ride this out and let it go and start from scratch like you said. August, September of 2020, let's get going again. So I don't know why everyone's in such a rush. That's the one thing I learned as I got older. Everyone's rushing. It's got to be 1, 2, 3, boom, microwave, drive through this, drive through that. Why are we in a rush to get through life? But then when we get older, we're saying, gosh, I wish I can go back. I wish I can slow down. So I hope everyone does the right thing and just let's let it play its course and let's find a vaccine. Let's hope everyone gets better from this and we'll start the sports season in September.
I agree. You know what? I'm right there with you. Let's just like you said, take a step back, and just regroup. It's not like these leagues are hemorrhaging money either. You know what I mean?
Lou, and the sports, they're not going anywhere.
No.
Baseball, football, basketball, college, high school basketball. Like, why can't we move on to 2020, 2021? It's like, Lou, the numbers. The one thing I do look at are the numbers of people dying from the coronavirus. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's staggering. So you want to go out and you want to play a basketball game or a baseball game. Oh, we'll play in front of no fans. We don't have anybody in the stands. That's okay. But what about the players? What about the umpires? What about the referees? What about the clubhouse people? The bus driver taking the team to the airport. Anyway, anyone can catch this virus, Lou. Anyone.
Yeah. It doesn't discriminate on age or nothing. And what I was saying at the beginning of the show today about the baseball, talking about doing that, I, for one, would not want to be away from my family if I had a young family for 4.5 months. And that's why I don't think that's going to go through. I really don't.
Lou, I just think we should wait it out, just see what happens, see if these numbers start going down, and hopefully it turns sooner than later.
Well, hey, Steve, you don't know how much I appreciate this. This has been an absolute blast. Hope to have you on again sometime, maybe in the fall once basketball is kicked into high gear, if that's all right.
Hey, Lou, you can have me on it anytime you want. I appreciate it also, buddy, having the opportunity to talk hoops with you, my man. Great job, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Steve Finnemore, he's a basketball historian in my book. He's a student of the game. And he really enjoys it, and you can tell. And great learning about the stories from the 70s. He brings up some great memories of the 80s and the 70s and the 80s, and I promise when he's on, we won't, like he said, we won't sound like the old man, get off my lawn type of a attitude. But it definitely was a different brand of basketball back in the day. And if you see him on Facebook with some of his stories, check him out because they really are fun to look back and read. And like we said about Pistol Pete Maravich, 44 points, 6 rebounds, or 5 rebounds, 6 assists, whatever it was. That was, you don't see that anymore. And it was, and then he got cut from the Olympic team in 1968. That's crazy. Thanks, Steve, again, Steve Finnemore, for coming on. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to step aside, take a break, and we got about a few minutes left of the show. So, again, stick around. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network.
Esports are here to stay. Go to jazzsports.ag, log into your account, and look for our new esports section on the top of your screen. Browse through all the different available matches and watch them live with our exclusive esports betting platform. Get instant access to game results, pending and graded bet reports, outright bet types, and upcoming match schedules, all at the easy reach of your fingertips. Jazz Sports puts you in the game.
Drinkade, ready for distribution worldwide.
Nothing makes us happier at Lexington Law than when our clients cancel our services. Listen to this client call and see what we mean.
Lexington Law Firm, this is Erin.
I would like to cancel my account.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, don't be. Actually, you guys have done tremendous work for me, and I was working with you for several years now. And my goal was to get a mortgage written by the end of this year, and I just got that mortgage commitment.
That is wonderful.
My credit went from like 440 working with you guys to 700.
Nice.
And I got a very good 4.25% 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I have nothing at all bad to say. If you ever want me to write a testimonial, well, I will. As a matter of fact, I've recommended you to a lot of friends.
Lexington Law has served over 500,000 clients, taking expert action on their credit that has led to the removal of millions of questionable negative items from their credit reports. Call now and learn more about how Lexington Law may be able to help you in the removal of negative items from your credit report, such as collections, late payments, charge-offs, and many others. Call Lexington Law today.
And welcome back here to the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network on this matinee Monday, April the 13th. Again, thanks to Steve Finnemore for coming on the show and talking hoops for about a half hour. What a blast. He brought up some great memories of the NBA, the 70s and 80s. And it's so funny. He brought up that example of the 76ers and the Lakers in the finals. First of all, Magic having to play point guard center because Kareem was hurt. He had 42 points in that game. I think 11 rebounds or 11 assists, 7 rebounds, whatever it was. But he was spot on. I can remember that like it was yesterday. Like he mentioned, how they went out and played ball after the game was over. It wasn't on live TV. For those of you that may remember, I remember watching the Channel 6 News up in the UP in Munising, and they would warn you 5 seconds in advance to turn the volume down if you didn't want to know the score of the game, because CBS showed it tape delayed at 11:30. And I can remember staying up and watching that game till 2 o'clock. Remember my dad saying, I'll stay up with you, and he didn't quite make it. And I can remember sitting on the edge of my seat because I didn't think the Lakers were going to win. I honestly thought it was going to go to Game 7 with Jabbar out. As I said, Kareem was my guy back then. Bob Lanier was my favorite. There was, he with the Pistons, and the Pistons were down a little bit. That was right after that, I think, I can't remember when he got traded to Milwaukee. But anyways, Kareem was my second favorite. I was so thrilled that they were finally able to beat Seattle in the playoffs, and he was able to get to the finals. And Dr. J was fun to watch, of course. And I was so happy that he was able to get a finals. They were able to win the NBA finals back in the 80s. They were able to get a ring. But I can remember watching that game, and we didn't know that Jabbar wasn't going to play. Again, like Steve mentioned, we didn't have the cell phones. We didn't have texting. The newspapers were, especially up there, they weren't real heavy into NBA. It didn't say that he was going to miss. And I can remember when Magic jumped at center and played center because Jabbar was hurt, and I thought there's no way. And that's where his legend started to grow right there. And that brought back some great memories of that game. And I can remember watching it till 1:30 or 1:45, like Steve mentioned, in the morning, and just thinking, wow, they actually won that game. And, but yeah, we're growing up watching the Pistons back in the 70s. A lot of the games weren't on TV. Like he said, not every Pistons game was on. Channel 50 carried the Pistons games out of Detroit, and they didn't show them all. And the Red Wings games, it was the same way. So a lot was radio and the theater of the mind. So you didn't even get to see some of the heroes of the game. And it brought back a lot of fun memories. The big men, we didn't even get a chance to talk to Steve. We'll talk about it some other time. We'll get him on, like I say, in a few months. Once basketball, maybe, if they decide that they're not going to play or whatnot, or what they're going to do. But I look at some of these all-time great teams that the decade of the 70s, and it is, it's dominated by the big man. And I look at, Kareem is on both lists, was number one. And I get it. I look at the finals, and then I look at the league MVPs. Now, Kareem was 5 times, I believe. Maybe it was 6. I'm looking through the list. 71, 72, 74, 76, 77, and 80. He was the league MVP. So 6 in a 10-year period. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the MVP of the league. And the other ones were Dave Cowens for the Celtics. And it was Bob McAdoo, Steve mentioned. Boy, he could shoot. I remember Bob. And unfortunately, as Pistons fans, he got traded to Detroit and never played. And that was kind of towards the end of his career. Then he ended up going on the Lakers, ironically enough, and played with them on the 88-89 team that Detroit beat 4-0. But then they had Moses Malone. Boy, there's a guy never fouled out of an NBA game. Never. That's a record, obviously, that'll never be broken. Could be tied. But how many years did Moses play? And he never fouled out of an NBA game. Ever. So that was amazing. Julius Erving, of course, was MVP in 81, but it dominated by the big men back in the 70s. And again, you look at some of the college teams as well. Bill Walton, as we mentioned, he was so good with UCLA back in the day, back in the mid-70s, and well on his way, as he was the MVP of the league the year after they won the championship. They won his rookie year, then he was MVP the following year, and he got, as Steve mentioned, he got injured. They were off to a 50-10 start, and then when he got hurt, they just, like he said, they fell apart and ended up not even making it to the finals. The Supersonics beat him in the semis, I believe, and then the Washington Bullets won against the Supersonics. I remember that 7-game series, watching some of those tape delayed. And Gus Johnson, boy, could he, downtown Freddie Brown, as both teams ended up playing each other in the finals the following year. You talk about an outside shot. Downtown Freddie Brown had one. That was one of my favorite nicknames right there from the 70s. But some great stories. Just bringing back some fun memories of growing up watching the NBA back in the day. And now, just, again, the larger-than-life figures that, you looked up to them so much as a young kid, and the NBA was part of it. And what fun to talk with Steve Finnemore this afternoon on the show. We're going to see if we can't do that. We're going to get the pucks out on Wednesday. We'll see if we can find someone that has been to a few games in their day, and we can talk a little nostalgia, maybe from the 70s and 80s as far as the NHL scene goes. And we're going to try to do it with all the sports, baseball and football as well. So kind of going to be our theme this week here on our matinee shows here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. We are going to talk hockey tomorrow night from 8 until 10 p.m. We're going to have Kevin Brooks from the University of Iowa on tomorrow night at 8:30. Their ACHA D2 team, they had a great year. They were their conference champions, coach of the year, all of that. They went undefeated. And we're going to talk to Kevin Brooks, the head coach of the University of Iowa, tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern Time. And we've got some other things in the works for our show tomorrow night. So, again, we invite you to watch us at our normal time, which is on Tuesday nights from 8 until 10 p.m. So, again, what a fun day here today. As always, I want to thank you guys and gals for watching us here on the network. Also, are listening to our recap shows. We are available. This show will be available on SoundCloud and iTunes as well here in a couple of hours. And for those of you that have taken the time out to listen to some of our taped shows, I really do appreciate it. And we hope to keep that going on as well. So, again, I look at the time. Our time's just about up. These hours just fly by here on the afternoon show, and I really do appreciate it. So, again, thank you for joining us here this afternoon. Not a whole lot as far as breaking news in our sports world. Most of it just centers around when do we think the seasons will start back up. And like Steve mentioned, there really isn't – he doesn't understand. And I have to agree with him real quick. The seasons are going to be there in the fall. Let's get everything safe. And I agree. And it's like I said, I don't see in baseball, for example, they want to do the two Grapefruit League venues, Florida and Arizona. My big thing on that is, are they really going to want to be away from their families in a neutral site for 3 to 4 months? Basketball and hockey, they could do a round-robin tournament. But there's so many variables and so many precautions that they have to get straightened out before all this happens. I just don't see it happening. I mean, who knows? But I guess we'll have to wait. It changes by the hour, changes by the day, and we'll be right here to bring it to you. Well, hey, that's going to do it this afternoon. Thanks again for joining us on the show. Our thanks to Steve Finnemore for coming on. It was an absolute blast, and we'll hope to have him on again real soon. Yours truly, Captain Lou, saying keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow night here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12 Ounce Sports Network.